into another episode of TA Tech Unboxed. Each episode we're chatting to the people behind the products that TA and HR teams use every day. If you're not already watching this on YouTube, head over for an unboxing of the core features of the product, which we'll be running at the second part of this show in Chapter 3. There'll be a link in the description for you. I'm Chris Haslam. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Bush. Mr. Darren Bush.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, good, thanks. Good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. Just coming back from a client lunch, so feeling very full and satisfied. I also got my LinkedIn top recruiting voice badge.
You
this
did,
week,
yeah. Congratulations on that. Yeah.
I mean,
it's about time.
Hours contributing to articles.
Yeah.
All good. How about you?
Yeah, good. I haven't got my top recruiting voice LinkedIn badge.
You deserve to have one.
That's what I was looking for. I was pushing for that. But no, I'm all good. It's a good start to the week so far, and there's a lot of obviously work being done at the moment. As I said, we're gonna be sharing this information, but we're doing some work on the early career acceleration program, and I'm hoping to start. You might see this post already. Right? I have, yeah, we have. Yeah, probably we'll be working for 2 months, but in reality, this it would have been nice to have 6 months, but we had 2 months to do it, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're going to share some of the things we've come across and lessons learned as well. So look out for those posts as well.
Interesting, can't wait. And who do we have on the show today?
So today, I'm excited for our next guest. Michael Blakely is a co-founder of Equitas, an interview intelligence tool designed for fair hiring and helping companies build diverse teams. Michael, in his previous life, was a professional interviewer and assessment expert. He's conducted 10,000 interviews, which, according to Malcolm Gladwell, makes him now an expert on the subject. So let's start the show by welcoming Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Thanks very much for coming.
Cheers for having me. Great to be here and excited to talk about the space, and good to be qualified as an expert. But hey, I'm not sure there's anything else I've done 10,000 times apart from interviews just yet.
I was going to say, I totally missed that in the show notes. 10,000 interviews. Wow.
That's what it says on his profile. So.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
Jeez, have we broke that down into like weeks and months? Do you know how many that is?
I think I was averaging at the height of it, maybe like 8 per day as well. And like after a full week of that, you are absolutely shattered.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
We believe there's a balance, right? It's like you can only do so many that can be super engaged in before interview fatigue kicks in.
100%. And I've started chatting about interview fatigue again recently. And it's not just on the candidate side and then doing so many round after round after round. It's hiring managers as well. They'll burn out. And like, if you always have the best quality hiring managers doing your interviews, even they'll be shattered and not delivering on their day job as well at the same time.
Hiring
so it's
squads is the answer, right? You've got to have people that are trained in your business to do this, not just one great HM.
Well, Amazon always had an internal program, didn't it? They called it the bar raisers, and trying to teach different people to do it across the bar. But I think sometimes they were a little bit of the veto experts in there that would just come in and say no a lot of the time. But that's my own take or opinion on it. It still was. I loved the level of quality that they put on their interview process and trying to make sure everyone was kind of upskilled on there. And the only thing with them, too many leadership principles as well. I think they were at like 14 or something crazy like that. So I think that was the test to become a bar raiser. If you could cite all 14, you were straight in.
I have a friend as well that was ex-Amazon, and he lost his role there because he didn't match a bar raiser. And of course, by not matching a bar raiser, Amazon then highlights you as somebody who's not going to move through the business. So it then tags you as like, hey, you're blocking someone that could be. I was
wow,
dude, that's harsh. It's harsh, but like if you think about it, as founders, as a leadership group, like it's not terrible practice, right? Of course, he identified training and coaching and stuff that he needed first. So there were indicators that he needed to go through to improve, and that he went through, and then eventually became a leader there. But it was a serious performance review trigger for them. I was so surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't agree that you can have, and I hate the term A players, just a whole company of A players in there. You need a combination. Otherwise, there's everyone fighting for like the one position each time.
So one of our advisors, a guy called Alex Elliott, at Strive at the minute, absolutely exceptional, and he writes
Yeah.
about this within recruitment and TA all the time. Where he says if you have nothing but pure like A players, like
Yeah.
people out there at the top of the game, this is just like the business won't succeed. You need B players who are like steady and dependable and will stay for
Yeah.
a certain duration of time. Otherwise, everyone will hop. You'll lose so much experience and knowledge across the business as well. The only thing you can't get away with is going C or D player beneath, but there's so many people in the tech space that will say, "Oh, I only hire A players," and I think that's
Yeah.
just an excuse, like for not training people up
Yeah.
as
Or
well and
an
developing
A-class
people.
team. An A-class team has defenders and attackers and midfielders, right? Or an A player
Yeah.
is not just that driving force always forward. It is you need to have. I don't think it's fair on people to brand them as a B player, right?
It different skill set might be super
Could be
conscientious.
an A totally, and an A
Yeah.
player. A
Yeah.
conscientious
Yeah.
A player is also okay.
I think there's a gap in
Yeah.
the market here. I think people aren't talking enough about B players. We should be talking about B players and C players.
Give us a quick view into your background. How the hell did you get into starting and building Equitas? And we'll do the product stuff in chapter 2.
Cool. Like Darren said, used to be a professional interviewer, assessment consultant as well. So that late stage, the hiring process, it was normally me sat in a room, either on my own or alongside a hiring manager as well. I had the opportunity to work for some incredible companies all across London, Ireland, further afield. So Transport for London, whenever I was based for a bit further down London, B Sky B, Aldi was my first ever employer, and I left and set up a lifestyle recruitment agency to recruit directly for them. So that was the first introduction into the world of recruitment, and one that taught me an absolute ton, because whenever we go a bit deeper today, we'll maybe have the opportunity to talk about bias. Whenever I first got started, I had no idea. I think I was clueless whenever I was doing my first round of interviews in my early 20s, hiring people in Daldy. And you learn a lot of people through trial and error as well. Started working for lots of freelancing all across the place. And I always say, whenever I'm doing my intros and calls, if you name a government department in London, I've probably done interviews for them at some stage. So
Mm.
it was always kind of public sector, it was high volume. And the last contract before I jumped and went full time with Equitas was actually for the prison service. So they were in a really interesting spot. They needed to hire tens of thousands of prison officers over a short period of time. So I think it was about 5,000 plus during the 18 months that I was there. And it was me setting up assessment and interviewer teams across a few different regions with them as well. Prison service, if you do work with them and you work with ex-governors, be warned, super dark sense of humor, absolute salt of the earth people. I thought I would never be able to work in a normal environment ever again after working with them and the sort of jokes that they made. But
Yeah.
some lifelong friends in there as well. But for me, I always used to run into the same two problems, no matter what company I was working for there. One, it was never a digital process at the late stages. You'd be sat in a room, pen and paper, trying to take notes and have an engaging conversation with a candidate at the same time, never succeeding. You'd either have a super engaging conversation and think this person's perfect for the role. You'd look down at your notes and be like, shit, I have no idea how to justify this. They are absolutely perfect for the role, but super engaging, but I've got nothing there. And then the flip side, you could have super detailed notes and this really stunted conversation. The candidate would think, hey, Michael seemed a little bit weird. Not sure if I'm going to go and work with that company there because he couldn't really hold a conversation at the same time. So that was the one side of it. Everyone else you've had from interview intelligence in the market will probably be banging that drum around capturing that data, which is super important. For me, the bigger problem was the bias that could creep in. Now, some of those old hiring managers I used to work with, by the end of a few days interviewing with me, they could be professional interviewers. They were really switched on. They knew more about the business than I did. They knew exactly the sort of knowledge within the role as well, and they'd learned how to interview quite well just after doing it for a few days in a row. So hiring manager bias was one of the main reasons that we kind of said with Equitas, let's try and solve something big. Let's go in here, see if we can create fair hiring, focusing in around interviews first as well. So everything that we do as an organization kind of touches on the one core value that sits right at the top of all our values, trying to be inclusive by default. So is this fair for interviewers? Is this fair for the organization? Is this fair for candidates? And whenever it comes to that, that's how we try to build out product as well. So it's not just capturing the data, it's trying to make sure that there's that structure there in the process so that they're actually doing good interviews as well.
Badass. Love it. Fairness for interviewers. That's an interesting like purview and jumping slightly ahead into some of the stuff we want to talk about in terms of market. But define that for me.
So there's so many times that interviewers or hiring managers might not have a ton of experience, and they're just really like, interview this candidate, and they're like, off we go. And it's just like, that's not really fair on them, is it? To be like, this is a skill set that nobody's taught you before. Okay, maybe you've done a little bit of training around unconscious bias training, and maybe you've like had a bit of a look. Sometimes I talk to people and they'd be Googling questions, good interview questions to ask around this role. So I don't think it's fair on interviewers to be put into that position or that time pressure as well. I look at our product, and sometimes we give people advice if they're scheduling too many interviews for an interviewer in a short space of time as well, because they need time to review, time to score it as well. So if you don't consider a hiring manager and interviewer perspective as well, I don't think you'll build the right tool off the back of that. And I've got a contrarian opinion in our space as well. A ton of people talking about AI notes. I don't think that's fair for either interviewers or candidates, because I was taught best practice interviewing, where you consider every bit of information within that context as well. Every other interview intelligence provider at the minute will have AI notes, shorten it down, 3 bullet points. Yeah, summarize, auto summarize, make a decision based on that. Yeah. The amount of bias that can introduce is absolutely insane.
That is
so like
contrarian, definitely different.
So you as a hiring manager might think, 3 bullet points, that's great, I'll just score them based on that. What if there's one huge negative one that was left out there as well? What if the AI just picks up on the positive bits in the conversation as well? People are jumping into something that could make their life easier there and forgetting about best practice assessment, which is reviewing everything, and whether that's listening in the audio and looking at the transcription at the same time as well. You need to be fair for the people who are delivering that. So what that looks like in reality, whenever we jump into the tool a little bit later here, is I think interviewers should have some level of consistent question sets and probing questions, and we taught how to use those and how to do those, but know that every interview is unique. Each person's different. So even if the conversation does go off a little bit, they can bring them back in with a probe. They can ask additional questions. Like, we're big in healthcare. So if someone says something that doesn't sound safe, I 100% want that interviewer to jump in and probe and dig in deeper and more information, even if the question isn't in front of them right there and then as well.
You raise a really good point, because I never really looked at AI interview intelligence or AI summarizing notes as leaving the AI to kind of condense and edit what the actual was said in the interview. And by doing so, like you said, you're leaving out something negative. But a couple of things you said when you were leading up to this was, when it comes to interview intelligence, is data capturing is one. Mm-hmm. 2 is bias. 3 is probably the questions that are asked in terms of the evaluation questions, and 4 was fair and inclusive. And those were there might be more. It'd be great if you can add any more in terms of the pillars. But what you're saying there, when it comes to data capture, if the other 3 are all out of sync and they're not correct, then in reality you got bias still. You're not asking the right questions, and it's therefore potentially you might be fair. The actual notes aren't strong enough.
Exactly. And if you're just capturing, I had a conversation with someone recently, it was like, we use MS Teams, we can record with that. I'm like, great. Does it segment it down into the different question sets and areas? Are you going to track and measure that in the long run and see which questions work and which ones don't? No, it probably all starts right at the top. So I would do the interview training piece, and then next set down, you write down questions. If you're not asking good quality interview questions with follow-up probes, and your interviewers aren't consistently delivering on that, then everything below it, the quality of what goes in, is what you're going to get out of the back of it as well. So capturing data for the sake of it just isn't enough. It's about upskilling every single interviewer, and if that's only 10 to 20% improvement with what we do, hey, I'm all for it.
Yeah, let's talk about the training side, because we joked about obviously being a Malcolm Gladwell expert on interviewing. And you've worked with obviously incredible client roster from B Sky B to Audi, as you said. What do you need to become someone who's proficient at asking questions?
Genuine interest in the other person. The further that I've moved away from doing interviews as day to day, and then come back to it now, the skill that I've got as hiring people, late stage interviews, ask me to go find you 1,000 candidates and do sourcing. I couldn't do that. I'd be clueless. I'd be learning from you, both how to go out and sourcing. Give me 1,000, tell me what are my top 10, by interviewing them. Absolutely love that piece as well. But you need to be genuinely interested in them, and for me, I always give a lot of founders advice and say, look, motivation is half the battle whenever it comes. Are they motivated by the company, the mission? Are they motivated by the role that they're going to come in and do and work as? And if you can kind of align on all of that, yes, technical skills are important. Yes, behavioral questions are important on that side as well. But all of that's like half the battle. And on that motivation piece, if you've got a good interviewer, like they can get that out of people, engaging with them back and forth as well, style of questions they ask, knowing when to probe in, dig deeper as well, on top of that. So that's all huge. Trusting in the process and the quality of your materials is huge as well. I always talk to people about my journey. Whenever I started, absolutely clueless. So I thought, hey, no such thing as bias, can't be bias as well. Halfway through my kind of professional interviewer career, I started questioning every decision I make, thinking about it too long, being like, oh, this is a female candidate, oh, Northern Irish candidate. Am I overscoring them? I would be more generous here, there, and well. And then I came out the other side where I was just like, if someone's taken the time to evaluate this job properly, create some really good behaviors, values, skills that we're going to score them against, and then give me a really clear scoring indicators back, forth, left, right, center. Then I was like, I'm doing as far as I can be and put myself and sense check myself. Great. And then if they have multiple people scoring it, that's even better sense check as well to make sure you're not going off too far off the back of that as well. But there's lots of little simple things that you can use to train your interviewers to kick off with in best practice. And then it's about moderating them, checking in, and seeing who's doing it. Lots of cool stuff we're thinking about in the long run as well to see if interviewers are actually engaged in the process, but I'll not release it just yet.
Should we talk about bias as well? Because you keep touching on it, and you called me out actually on the prep call about one bias that I think was a blind spot for me, which was we were interviewing candidates, and I said that sometimes when it comes to kind of giving feedback, you have to you want to see all the candidates and then before making a final decision. And you call me out on that for and you go, Michael. Actually, you explain it as what the bias is that I had.
Well, just on that one, like try and encourage interviewers just to focus on each individual interviewer, each individual candidate. Otherwise, you start comparing, contrasting. Oh, did they have this? Did they not? As well, and it could influence decision across the board.
Isn't that just a natural thing though to do? Isn't it? That's what we tend to do as humans. That's one of the things that comes under bias because you want to, especially after you've seen a second person, you can't help but compare.
Yeah, but you should just try and wait to the end. And like that's the other thing, really simple thing about scoring. Like always try to encourage people whenever it's fresh in their mind and it's there. So whether it's just delivered the interview, scoring it afterwards as well if you can. Now because we're capturing the interview, it's great. Like we talked a little bit about asynchronous panel interviews, great way to do it where they can listen in and like score with that transcript right there and then as well. And for me, I'd love it if people vary the order because you compare and contrast, Darren. Like if you have like an absolute amazing candidate first one, like some people will fall into this trap of just being like, all right, that's the bar that everyone like needs to meet and hit from there as well. And like it could be a multi-stage interview process as well. So there's too many variables. So that mindset of being like, I'm going to score this one person based on the criteria metrics I've got in front of me, great, done. And then at the end you can have your kind of wash up and be like, okay, here's the person I thought. But I've heard one recently where someone said, we want to make an offer and we've got 2 more interviews on the Friday because we're worried about losing someone. And I'm just like, hey, I wouldn't make that offer. I would hold out. But I'm not the recruiter. I'm the interviewer.
Just on the evaluation scorecard, because there's something that we're looking at as well. How do you set that scorecard up? How do you get that candidate benchmarking up? So you're just purely looking at that role and what the score you're looking for, and to ensure that you're only focused on that candidate. So, what advice do you have for people who are sort of trying to do that benchmarking piece?
It depends on their level of hiring maturity. Like sometimes if people go overkill, tailor every single role, like 5, 6 indicators, it can blow their hiring manager's mind and they'll just be like, whoa, 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 what's going on here as well? So normally I'd say, look, there's easy ways to introduce something that's a little bit more generic early on as well. So if you as an organization have a set of behaviors or like values that you normally score against, great. And like values interviews, I'm always huge on it. I always tell everyone, hey, if you Google values hiring, Equitas's article comes up as number 1. That's a bit of an introduction into what values-based hiring actually is as well. And values, that can be asked for nearly any role. So that's normally a really nice introduction and a way to make sure that, hey, this is introducing structured interview process as well. And anyone can sit in them. Can have someone outside of the team, marketing person hiring a developer, vice versa as well, and getting a different take and opinion within the room. Now, whenever people start to niche down by different departments and different roles, I love it whenever they tailor specifically for that. It can become a bit overwhelming. I've seen people try to create like 200 different planning and organizing questions. That's overkill. That's a question bank that's too big for one particular behavior as well. So it's this balance of getting the right kind of generic questions and then tailoring down for each and every role. But it comes back down to hiring manager time. Are they going to have enough time to sit and create these criteria, or do they need a lot of hand holding from TA? So TA involving hiring managers is usually the best way to create it whenever we've seen it done well. If hiring managers are left to their own devices, they might not have the time, the capacity to set those up, even if you're showing them what good looks like for other roles as well on top of it. So it's a really hard balance to strike right for every organization. If they've never seen what one of these frameworks looks like, then you've got to start it off sort of slower, smaller, more generic across the board. As they get really skilled, some of your hiring managers can buy into the process. And if it's a role that they hire for regularly, these scoring indicators and criteria and metrics become secondhand to them and makes that sort of evaluation process so much easier. They know exactly what they're looking for in the role. They can say where the gaps are. It's amazing. I love it whenever it's done well. And within our product as well, it makes the auto-generated feedback so much more detailed and rich.
I love how I don't think people really understand the value over time, right? It's the iteration of the process and niching, like refining those questions and even broadening them slightly to make sure you're generating the answers that you need to evaluate. Is definitely the market is moving that way. Everyone's getting better at it. I've even started coaching candidates when I speak to them whenever they're asking me how do I deal with these values-based questions, how do I deal with these questions that aren't maybe directed but they're looking for an answer. I was like, I did one this morning for a product designer, super difficult market to do it for, right? And I was saying that you've got all the information that you need there to retrofit looking at questions and how you might be asked them and what they will be evaluating, and making sure that you are prepared to go into those sessions to give answers based on whatever is being evaluated and whatever the information you've been given. It's like I feel like candidates are getting way more aware that the process is now just not come in, meet the hiring manager, and you're going to asked a random set of questions based on your experience, right? Now they feel like they're being evaluated.
And if I'm a candidate in this market at the minute, I'm doing two things. I'm preparing a load of past examples and scenarios that link in to whatever that particular company is looking for. And I'm also thinking to myself, doing that research on what do they normally look for, what's the website, what's back in the job advert, the role as well. So if they ask me any scenario-based questions, yeah, especially if they can look who's there and pattern match of what they're looking for there as well, is amazing. But scenario-based questions going forward-looking as well. How would I solve problems within this organization, and prep that across the different functions that are all so useful.
Love it. I also like weaponizing values back. I think I even got that from you. It's like, you've given me a set of values for me to look at. What questions can I ask back at the company that shows that they are adhering to those values? Give me an example when X. I know there's probably better questions for it. Again, new area. I'm super new to it, but I thought it was a super fascinating way to look at being interviewed and interviewing the company.
Yeah, I've seen it on the D&I. People are asking about diversity inclusion. What's the diversity inclusion policy and process as well, the company and through your hiring process. Really, I look at this, some really hard questions that the candidates can be asked, where it puts the hiring manager on the spotlights.
I love it. We're hiring for a front-end developer at the minute, and some of the feedback that we had off Amy, one of our senior engineers, she was like, I'm getting asked some great questions by the candidate right at the end, being like, look, you've got this on your website as ways of working. What does that look like in reality day to day? You've got this value here as well, how do you kind of embody that as well? So it's some great candidates know to ask good quality questions at the end of the interview as well.
You posted about this the other day, Michael, the hiring your front-end developer role, and you mentioned you were going to unpack it in an article. My assumption is the article is going to come out before we go live on this particular podcast. I'd love to pick your brains about it because, and if you haven't seen it, by the way, guys, I'll share a link to the post in the description because the post talked about, first of all, you're hiring a front-end developer role. You had 561 applications. What? I mean, I've been doing hiring for startups for all my adult life, and I've never seen that many applications come through first of all, for a developer role. Second of all, in your post, you were talking about you've been using Chat GPT, and it had some unreal effects. Do you mind just unpacking it a little bit for us? I really wanted to put you on the spot with this.
But both sides, I've seen it from candidates for ChatGPT, and like some of the stuff that came through, I'd never expect. I thought there was candidate fraud at one point. Whenever I saw similar answers start to come through, I'm like, are these candidates sharing like what they do? And it was the simplest thing. Again, I can't remember if it was Javier or Amy. Actually, I think it was Amy in our dev team said, Michael, take what your application question is and put it in there and say, answer this. And that was it. That was the same answer we saw come up time and time again, 5 or 6 times. And I'm just like, talk about like lazy prompting.
Yeah.
That's insane, isn't it? If you as a candidate think, and the thing that really got me, and this is what makes me think it's going to be so interesting seeing how people use ChatGPT, the answer automatically defaulted to a technical one as well. So maybe the people who are on there using ChatGPT the most are devs as well. And that role was not specific around a front end, or developers are very general. Hey, tell us about the most challenging project that you've ever worked on, or one of the other ones, the proudest project that you ever worked on, defaulted to a technical example and answer as well. So I wonder if that influences what we're going to see come out as in terms of output. If it's all the most sort of early adopters, innovative ones, it's always going to kind of be technical.
Can I just ask, can you unbox the process, like what you set up? Like,
end to end, yeah. So 100%. And like that's the thing that's in question as well, because whenever hopefully I've written the article by now, it'll be live as well. Let's see, I might be going slow and it still might be due to come out. I wanted to know if it was overkill or not for the role that we're hiring for, or whether it was streamlined enough or not. So really simple 4-step process. So 1, 4 application questions, and we tell the candidates, look, that's what you're going to be scored on, not your CV and not your background, where you're from. 200 words max on each of these 4 questions, and we're going to anonymize it as well. So we don't even see your name, what's your background, where you're from as well. So it was me anonymizing it, passing it to George. We don't have a cool tool or anything like that yet. And then he was going through and scoring them based off that. Any contentious ones there and like strong profiles who were nearly at the line, would nudge them through based off the back of that. I'd get them to review the profile at that stage.
And before that, your sourcing channels, you mentioned 3.
Yeah. So Otta, which was brand new, Otta Pro as well. That got us the most volume.
Big shout out! Great, absolutely fantastic platform. We're a big fan. I don't know if have we got them piped?
We haven't. We haven't yet. No.
Okay, Theo, I've been chasing you for months. I really want to get you on. Sorry.
Yeah. No, Grant. Otta were spot on, and like that's where a lot of the volume came from, I think, as well. Resumo, we used as our ITS, really close partner, got a load of mutual clients together. Cathal over there, huge shout out to him. Make sure you check his out. Just a great ATS, especially for Stage Cup.
Also, he's add on the show.
Also not on the show. Also
add on to the show.
We're going to get them on.
He can talk to you about healthcare, public sector hiring. I think he's got the most hospitals and trusts back in all of Southern Ireland. So he's like united a whole market there. Super interesting to chat to him about his go-to-market and how he got there as well. And then the last thing that we used was LinkedIn as well. So previously, whenever we'd use LinkedIn, we'd maybe spent about a couple of £100 on a role and got about maybe 30, 40 applications. Set up the same this time.
A job advert on LinkedIn.
Just a job advert on LinkedIn, and then put them through to Resumo. There you go. Bada bing, bada boom. You'd maybe get 30 to 40 applications. This time around, bang, it was just like maybe 147 from Resumo and LinkedIn, and then the rest came via Otta as well on top of that. So the thing that I think helps is job advert and job copy. And like for us, we first time.
You saw my face. I was like,
I think it's simple tweaks, like what's
Yeah,
important to
agreed.
you as a company. So, like for us, we kind of lead with the whole reason we exist is to create fair hiring. So our DEI statement isn't something that's tacked on at the end. It's like, look,
Mm.
this is why we're doing what we're doing. Like, is that something you buy into? Don't mind what your background, who you are, come in, like help us with this mission that we're on as well. Another thing that I think is a really simple one, like 2, 3 bullet points, is just like something to grab their attention right at the top to be like, why this role? And like just something to try and hook in early on and get them reading that next
Yeah, cool.
paragraph down as well. And then for me, it's super important to be like, what are the interesting challenges that you're going to be working on? Because they don't want to just come in and do a day job. What's interesting, what's exciting as well. Not going to be spending 100% of your time on the most interesting things as well. But again, what are 2, 3 bullet points there? And then last piece, and everyone who's any kind of DEI expert consultant will be not going overkill on must-haves. So I think it was Texty who wrote research on that a while ago where it was like 6 bullet points or less, which we always try and do. Anything after that, just start throwing them in nice to haves as well. Broadens your pull out. Okay, a bit too
I even
much
sometimes
this
argue
time.
to remove nice to haves a little bit, right? Like
Yeah,
at
fair.
times, because I feel like the further down the bullet points I get, the more I'm going, oh, I don't have that one. Oh, I don't
Yeah,
have that one. Now it was, if you put 6, I'm at 1 or 2. With the nice to haves, I might be at like 5 or 6, and someone starts to think, oh, I'm not right for this. I haven't got any of the nice to haves. I've got yeah, I'm not right for this. So I'm always a big fan of open funnel, top of funnel, because I believe
yeah.
that actually helps you mitigate. I don't like it when people talk about getting the right applicants to apply, because the right applicant, what is that? I think that's really difficult. I believe your top of funnel should be open, because it will invite more diversity into your funnel in the first place. It will stop people from going, I can't do that, or I'm not that, or doesn't look like me.
And the one I'd love to find out from both of you is like years of experience. There'll be some organizations who mandate it, like you have to put something in there as well. And like for us, we've removed it out. So again, it's a balance. If you're not testing them technically throughout the rest of your
Mm.
process, you could be in danger there, couldn't you? Of like hiring someone who can actually do
Mm.
the role. But as long as there's some sort of technical
Yeah,
test, I think you can strip it out, can't you?
Well, if you get the process right, you don't. It doesn't matter. I think if you can
Yeah.
get a really good group of people at the top, a really diverse group of people at the top. Sorry, Dan, I know I cut you off there, but I think then it's about your process, right, and your ability to evaluate, and that's where the controls need to come in, where you need to be super good at just making sure that the individual that you eventually want to hire, or individuals that you eventually want to hire, is going to actually have that impact and pushes your business forward. I totally and utterly agree with you on that. Like, get them in at the top. It's a marketing play, isn't it? You don't. I always think this, like, what form have you ever filled in to buy a product has made you fill in a cover letter as to why you deserve to let me service you my product? None ever. Seems dumb to me, right?
And I realize we've gone way off piste in terms of chatting about what our process was. So
yeah.
sorry, those attraction platforms, job advert, through to those 4 application questions. After that point, we'd invite them to a technical test. Now, this one you've both overlapped in and around tech before as well. For the tech test, we didn't want to do anything linked to interviews, HR as well, in case people thought they'd be working for free, which I've seen other people in the space do. And actually, I normally don't name drop them. Let's see if I get sued off the
Mm.
back of this. But I'd heard Revolut in the days used to say, hey, your technical test is go find us 300
Yeah.
customers before the end of the week as well. So things like that, we need to get out of the space as well. So it is dangerous. And like that's for us. We went with something off
Was
the wall and we went, hey, building rockets and rocket ship as well, sort of thing, and linking into some open API data there. Last 2
can I just
stages,
ask just on that
technical.
test
Yeah, go for it.
So you didn't go with a third party platform. You didn't go with
No,
you actually did something in house, and you yeah
in-house, in-house, all the
yeah
technical testing providers out there for SMEs are way too expensive.
got it.
And we're really lucky that we've got 2 super senior engineers who can design, review really well, and look at that. I guess once people get to a certain size of organization, having standardized, streamlined, paired coding tests and stuff like that could work. But some of the people we've heard quota stuff in the past, eye-watering, like per candidate costs as well. As a startup, doesn't work for us, and we can do it. Think we can do it better ourselves. After tech test, we got to a technical interview with one of our senior engineers, and then final stage interview. Obviously, the interviews we did through Equitas, and we did them asynchronous panel interviews. So one person would deliver, ask the questions, capture all the data, score. Other person would listen back, look at the transcript, and score in their own time as well. And yeah, last stage one was the values interview.
The way you guys think about evaluation. You know, a lot of people jump into an interview at the end of that interview and go, "That was really good, wasn't it?" I score them a 5 out of 10. I scored them a 5 out of 10 on that. I can't really remember the notes from that bit, but I like the. We are big fans of pull off platform, delay, wait, evaluate later once questions have settled. I've been going through a process of learning for myself for that, and actually, I did a test where I tracked I did my immediate interview notes and scorecard, then waited, and then redid it after reading my notes again, and they were varyingly different. There was a huge swing.
Which way?
So I did my own personal testing.
Which way?
The opposite. Over time, they became the opposite. After having thought about the answer that I'd given, because I was getting, you know, all the basics of interviewing done badly, right? Like vibey interview, total vibey interview. I'm coming out, I'm like, yeah, but they were weak there, but we really got on. So that's a 5 for technical.
This is the problem that can sometimes come in is people don't assess them on the quality of the content. It's how much they like them as well. And where I think that can split is extroverted candidates versus introverted as well. So they might not be super engaging, but they might give you quality content as well and get scored down because of that lack of engagement, even though they might not need it for the role.
Should we just pick up on what Chris has said?
I also think, sorry, Dan, there was a final part of that. Like I also think like going back and reviewing the answer that I wanted, or like what I was looking for, I think was a big part of the process for me, is like actually going back and looking at the question and looking at the intended, or thinking about the intended response I wanted for those questions, then reviewing allowed me to go, actually, they did a poor job. They did a really poor job of hitting the markers I was looking for, which I found super interesting, and how much I'd been led by my bias of the quality of the individual in the interview. I thought that was super interesting. So I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, because what you're saying though, I want to ask Michael's opinion on this. So, Chris, you're saying that when we have an interview, you can evaluate there, but you should evaluate maybe 24 hours later and then review it. It gives you time to sort of for it to sink in.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
okay. Was Michael? What's your opinion? What's in terms of the
This is really interesting, actually, now that we're talking about this, and maybe this practice and process is going to change, because best practice always used to be have to do it there and then, right after the interview. And I think the reason for that is because no one's notes were ever 100%, and they'd forget. You'd forget about stuff as well. Whereas if everyone's getting more comfortable with data, like interview data being captured, candidates okay with it, hiring managers the same as well, the process actually might change in the future on when you actually do the scoring as well. So what we've seen in reality, and like for me, it's probably just personal preference, and I don't know if there's a little bias to this as well. I love it whenever, if I'm the one reviewing, if I'll get in and do it first thing in the morning as well, really fresh, can like listen to the interview, look at the transcript at the same time as well, and score based off that. And real big danger that I see across a lot of the different platforms is being able to see other people's scores. And if you're sharing interviews and you're tagging and you're commenting, oh, check out this cool bit here and there, people are going to be influenced massively. And whether that's seniority bias coming in and like the person who's in charge of the role, like being like, oh, I love this candidate, what do you think? And you being like, yeah, spot on as well. So the one bit of advice I'd always give for evaluation is make sure you do it independently and don't chat to anyone. Don't let Chris be like, Darren, you got to listen to Michael. Incredible interview as well. Immediately skewed, and you don't want to go too far off from what you're.
What I'd learned, and I thought was super interesting, is the role was to work with my business partner, and my role in evaluation wasn't necessarily technical. My role in this particular environment was to think of the agenda of the hire and why we were bringing that individual in, and then evaluate them against the why, not the technical answers. Even though I could give some view. I'm an experienced recruiter. I'm his business partner. I've been here for a long time as well. But taking me out of that environment and making me look down on the hire and thinking, right, what is this? What's the role? What's it here to do? What's the agenda? That really changed my answers. And walking away really helped.
And there's one thing you've touched on there that's super interesting. If it's a technical question, you don't have the technical expertise, you need to be led or guided by on that stage if it's part of the interview. So I've seen that where other people prefer to do a bit of collaborative scoring there if they don't have the ability and to do it, and literally just opt out of that one because, hey, if it's within a healthcare and it's like me doing a surgical interview as well, I'm not scoring on that. Dear God, I can score them on their planning and organizing and on other behaviors and resilience and things like that. Cannot do technical.
We're also exposed to different biases, aren't we? Like my business partner was technically impressed, but was blinded by the need for the hire, right? So he was technically impressed, and my agenda was I'll unpack the hire off call. It's another point to give some context to this, but because I can't share right now. But it was the first time I'd been exposed to the dynamic of a hire where it wasn't for me specifically, or I wasn't evaluating just like, can they do the job? I had a particular reason I was in the interview, super structured by my business partner and his part of the workflow here. I just thought it was super interesting. And then when we were talking to you on the pre-calls and all the other stuff that we've been doing on this podcast, really got me thinking about how this is so true. It's a really practical. It feels good as well. I know I've made the right hire.
So that one piece you've talked about, when's the best time to evaluate, that's probably changing now in the world that we live in. Up until now, it was always immediately, right after, do it then before you forget everything while notes are fresh in your head as well. That could change in the future. It'll be interesting to see what people come out with best practice as going forward. I think
for me, there needs to be some studies, whether it be A/B testing to sort of see, because the way I think in terms of evaluating, you touched on it, you think about the forgetting curve. And that, you do the interview, and all of a sudden you start forgetting everything, and it is within 30 minutes potentially you might have forgotten about 10-20% already of the material, and now you're filling the gaps with what you think you heard or thought you heard. So I'll be interested in terms of someone looks at that and goes, in this system where they evaluate straight away, and then you ask them again to evaluate 30-45 minutes later, or maybe 24 hours later, and see what the scores are coming out there.
But there's even another one, to go back to your kind of point earlier about comparing candidates against each other. And now this isn't linked to job interviews, but it was an Israeli judge study that they did, and it was maybe harshness or leniency of sentences based on time of day. And if it was like right before lunch, you were getting sentenced no matter what, and no bail set. And then right after lunch, it would go up. There'd be more bails coming through as well, and then the curve would start going down as people got hungrier. So people can be harsher or more generous based on the time of day, how hungry they are, what's going on there as well. So it'd be fascinating to see, is there a sweet spot window of when to evaluate candidates? Is it every morning between 9 and 11
that's the challenge, isn't it? When you've asked him to do it straight away. If you then ask him to do it 24 hours again, if you have another person after that skews you, and then like you said, the time of day, potentially might be different. That could impact it as well. But I think it's something that when it comes to interview intelligence, this is like that field that you're in. I'd love to see more information come out from that and more data on that.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating to see. But definitely at the minute, I'm still a bit of a purist. If you're the one conducting it and scores needed, immediately after, do it then. If you're anyone else involved in the process, a bit of time when you're alert awake, something early in the morning, always good for me.
Do you want to unbox the process you had with your into that? You did the 4 stages, but can you just give us a summary in terms of what was kind of the insight you had at each different stage when you're hiring that? And you've hired that person, right? You've announced.
Made an offer today.
So congratulations.
I'm super excited. They seem absolutely incredible as well. And there's actually a huge sort of left turn at the end as well on something that we discovered in terms of final candidates that we got to. So 2 absolutely exceptional ones, and one of the ones that we're contemplating offering with as well. I'm not going to spoil the article. You have to go and read it here as well. But some flags and concerns coming up as well in terms of location, where they're actually based, I'm gonna leave it as a cliffhanger here.
Yeah.
we had to do a lot of digging there to try and find out who this person was, where they're from, and everything like that.
Right to work checks,
as
you
well.
mean?
So
is it like you talking about that? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So
Interesting.
You have
but
to read it now.
I'll not go. I'm not.
You have to
You're
read
gonna
it.
have to read
Yeah.
it. I'll go into more detail on that.
We'll hope we'll be
Um,
able to share it in description by the time this is coming out. Of course, I will do everything for everybody.
I hope you give me enough lead time. But to give you a bit of an overview of the process, so job advert, that's key. Think we got it right this time. And for that leading into attraction, using multiple channels there, yeah, too high a volume is what I would say in the world of Chat GPT and AI. A lot more people applying, a lot more generically as well. Amazing to get that level of volume. I would have, if I had more budget, sort of entered a few things in there to save us time on the manual processes, sifting through people anonymously and blind as well, but want to be quite good with practice process there. Tech test, think we progressed too many people towards that as well, but we thought, hey, they're in with a shout, let's make sure that we test them so we can get them through the technical interview as well. Whenever it started to get to the later stages, I think we had about, I'll double check as well, maybe 12 through the technical interview, maybe plus or minus a few extra people there as well. I would say only about 6 of them made it through the final stage interview as well. Obviously, using our own questions platform within there as well. We, for this role, because it was a bit different to previous roles as well, we thought, hey, maybe we'll streamline our scoring and hiring criteria down. It's a test that's proved what we thought, in that it made it more difficult to differentiate and score them as well. So definitely going back to like 5-6 points as well, the way that we used to do it. And actually, we're redeveloping our values in the process. So even though I said earlier about Googling values hiring, don't look at our values on the website. They still need a bit of work, and we're going to streamline it and had an experiment here, which I think worked quite well. Good luck.
It should be iterative, right? That process. I totally agree.
Yeah, it is. Like, you don't know what you use day to day until you get in and start to get to know the team and what works for you as well.
How many hours in total did you spend as a company interviewing for this one role?
We've not got it all metriced out yet as well, but for the interviews, on average, they were about 45 minutes as well. So, it wasn't too many hours, I don't think. It's a hard one, because for us, whenever we go and preach to people, we're just like, look, if they've hit the benchmark on a technical test, invite them to interview and let's see how they do. And you can start to build your employer brand with every single interview that you do. If you're giving them super quick candidate feedback, even if they don't make it, trying to refer them on to other people who might be a good fit for the role or looking for a front end dev as well, they'll thank you for it. They'll remember you, and like, it just helps build out that brand with the way you interview.
Totally.
I'd like to get your view on asynchronous interviews.
This is an interesting one. The first article that I ever wrote on LinkedIn in 2018 was the death of one-way video interviews and asynchronous interviews. So I am not a prophet of doom, because they immediately started going up and to the right as soon as I've written that thing, especially the pandemic. It's just grown and grown and grown as a space. The PC answer is there's a place, there's a time for them as well. Sometimes they were introduced heavily for early careers, graduate hiring, apprenticeship hiring as well. And that's when they have super, super high volume, and they're just trying to funnel it down as well off the back of it. For me, I have always disliked them. I do not think they're an engaging candidate experience. I don't think that the convenience of doing an interview in your own time outweighs the benefit of speaking to the people and doing a live interview as well. And the flip side of them is I'd rather not invest my time. I'd rather them say, hey, you're not going to be shortlisted for an interview, and then be harsher in my application earlier on. I'll be like, great, no, I'm not a right fit for the role off the back of that there. So not a huge fan. There are some great providers out there, and I always do refer other people in my network whenever it comes to them. Like, a couple that come to mind would be Sunny with Interviewer AI out in Asia and APAC as well. Closer home, you've got Ewan and the Willow crew as well. So I'm always happy to refer people to them. I just don't believe in the process as well. So yes, they can say it's time saving, but if you think about it, your hiring managers are still going to sit there and review a good whack of them as well. We've talked a little bit about evaluating decision making as well on top of that. This just really cranks up the numbers on that, and the mental fatigue that hiring managers will have to go through on assessing questions again from them on top of it. Whereas at least whenever they're interacting and they're live with someone, there's a bit of back and forth, a bit of brand
That's a
building.
really good point.
As well.
That's a really good point, right? Like you still got to watch the videos. You still got to watch them all. Like, what time are you actually saving from going through them? Unless there's some hardcore, which we've already unpacked as not being that great, AI note taker that's going to synthesize everything for you and make a decision for you.
So if AI, like one-way video interviews win the ball game, if AI gets to the point where it can also shortlist and assess them for it as well. But everyone on this call is probably pretty switched on the AI law that's coming out. So New York obviously has their local law. I think it's 144 as well. Let's see how that plays out in terms of bias audits as well. There's an incredible startup based in Northern Ireland called Enzi, pure AI auditing tool as well. Same idea again, trying to make sure companies are using AI in a fair and ethical way. European legislation starting to come out around fairness in AI as well. So if one-way video interviews can either be fairly assessed without having any kind of human intervention, great, then it probably is a great tool as well. Nowhere near yet at the minute. And how would you do it? Like purely on text? Accent bias could come in there because the transcription is not as accurate off the back of there. Facial recognition, we know the direction that went for other big one-way video interview providers in terms of scoring candidates with different skin tones, either harsh or fair, based off the back of that as well. So like so many mistakes, and like I even saw it on a human level whenever I was doing it. We talked earlier, 8 interviews for live interviews as well. That got cranked up to 16, 20, 25 interviews. People would expect you to assess in a day as well if it was completely async, which is just, you couldn't even decide what you're going to have for dinner at the end of that if you're assessing that many candidates on the same behaviors as well.
So sorry, it increased the demand.
Double,
they're
shorter, aren't they? So the expectation is you can do more. If there's the volume.
Exactly.
So,
and then the other side of it is busy hiring managers trying to fit that into their day role as well. Really difficult, really, really difficult. But that's why they got introduced in early careers and apprentices and graduate roles, because the volume of candidates, they're so high there. They're trying to narrow it down. Do I think I can write the end of interviews part 2 in 2023? Probably not. I'm not going to make that prediction again. It's just I need to tweak it to some degree as well, because not a huge fan, but I see the use case and why people buy it on efficiency. The last person who's touched on this one is you don't want to hire actors, and this is Jamie Betts from Neurosite, who said with the introduction of Chat GPT, if they're allowed to record as many times as possible, they can just grab it and prompt it really well prompted based on, here's the job spec, here's the role, here's the company website, here's what I'm going for there, answer this, I need a 2-3 minute script based on my CV. Bang, they can have a perfect, and you'd watch that back and be like, wow, incredible, need to hire this person. They get on the call, or live interview.
And and then AI is evaluating the answer. It's AI interviewing AI at the end with a human just delivering the words to it, right? We talked about this with Nicola Sullivan a little bit from Meet and Engage, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, we need to talk a lot, probably another episode about AI in the candidate side. You touched on it, Michael. And Chris and I, we've had this chat about, should you have this process where you have, one part is, AI is open. It's imagine like it's like the Olympics, where in terms of drugs and drug cheating, you can do it, and then you've got another part which is it's not allowed, it's not permitted at all. But you have both of those.
Imagine how fast Usain would be.
So
Imagine how fast Usain would be if he was allowed to take drugs.
So take 2 departments there to look at that as use case. Marketing, okay, maybe it's good for idea generation and kicking off some things and doing like that. So you'd be like, for a marketing role, you'd be like, that's okay. Development, there's bugs that are coming out that people aren't spotting until 4 to 6 months down the line, because no human would have ever written that line of code that way, and then it makes it really difficult to debug off the back of that. Or the flip side of it, you speak to any of our developers on our team, they're like, one of the biggest things that we need is problem solving. And if you've got something that's just like prompt write code, their problem solving ability might go completely out of the back of that. And then the last point is, if they have to rely on it so heavily for prompting and coding and their problem solving skills, your whole code base could be on OpenAI. It's literally there. If they keep putting in, this is what we're working on, can you optimize, can you do this, can you do this? You're literally sharing your whole code base and IP with someone as well. So marketing potentially, development potentially not.
It's interesting. Again, Nicola and I and us picked through this a little bit on like how, like Darren was saying, it's like opening it up a little bit. Now we let people, you can Google answers to things, right? And that we have access to the data that OpenAI is going to collect. It just consumes it considerably faster than we do, and then spits it back out at you, right? It doesn't force us to learn, and thus do we miss something? And that's why we were chatting about, do you separate 2 sessions? But I totally and utterly agree with you. Like, it's not perfect. It's good for human use to regurgitate, but like even during interviews, I can tell if someone's using Chat GPT. Their answers, I'm not allowed to swear, but they are wet. Oh, jeez. I'm like, and like you said, you were getting answers that were the same, that were repeated. Right?
Well, it's the way people structure it the same. Like, and some people will naturally have this style, but it used to crack me up if anyone now sends me an email or anything that says firstly, secondly, thirdly, and finally, like that really. And I'm just summary. Like, it's summary. That's the one. That is the one.
Yeah. With a little emoji, maybe a rocket as well at the end. You start seeing that as well.
Why do you think my posts are over emoji?
I'm just referring to all of Chris's posts.
What other tool do you see in the world of TA or in HR that is either up and coming or super impactful right now that you're an admirer of?
I can't do one. I've got to give you 3. Firstly, secondly, and thirdly, and then summary as well off the back of it as well. So there's a few people in the space who I just really believe in and like love what they're doing and happily refer them back, forth, left, right, center on calls as well. So firstly, I mentioned him there, Jimmy Betts, Neurosite. He is calling bullshit on the assessment industry and targeting early careers, high volume as well. Go watch some of his stuff on how to audit your hiring process on generative AI, and you're going to love him. He's just really intelligent person in the space, helped other companies scale and grow, now doing it on his own off the back of it. So you need to get Jimmy on the show. Reham, if you've got Reham from Vite, I always call her the queen of bias. She has gone so deep in the problem space of bias whenever it comes to application and sifting as well, and a really unique approach in that she's like, people aren't going to shift away and move on to a new ATS that does this end to end. We need to live within their ATS and blind everything across and start introducing tools that help them sift in a fair way as well. So Reham, also absolutely incredible. Last one, again, you'll notice a kind of theme here on like fairness and inclusivity. Martin Mason, he is absolutely insanely good, and I'm now hoping that I don't butcher his company name. It's Talent Mapper, I believe, and actually I'm going to look at my emails here to make sure that that's the case. It is. It is. I've met him, yeah. You've met him, fantastic. Yeah. Martin,
you referred him actually,
absolutely.
I think.
Did I? Amazing. So Martin, nobody is going to crack the whole end-to-end, how do we make sure hiring is fair, than him. And he's also got a tool for internal talent mobility as well at the same time. So I think that's a big problem for big organizations across the world, in that we've just talked about going out there, hiring, end-to-end process. Hey, what you do, Michael, is that cool as well? You could cut out so much of the waste if you keep people really engaged internal and move them to the right roles that their skills are made for. So what Martin's doing in that space is amazing. And he also just goes in and gives so many workshops to people on how to do fair and inclusive hiring and what's the gaps in your process and where's bias creeping in as well. So yeah, speak to all 3 of those, get them on the show. You're going to love them.
Thank you so much for joining us then, Michael.
Thanks for having me. Good crack.
It's been great fun. I mean, I think we're going to have 3 more podcasts off the back of this. We've promised you, 1 on AI, 1 on unbiased hiring. So, watch this space for future reference. But again, thank you so much. Product looks unreal. How can people reach out to you?
Good question. Michael at Equitas.ai. I can go the whole Michael Seibel route as well, where if anyone reaches out to me and mentions the podcast, I will get back in touch to you, no matter what it is.
Like that. The first person to offer something
that mentions us
for being on.
That mentions you.
Yeah, that mentions us. But okay, cool. Look, thanks so much. Reach out to Michael directly, guys. If anybody is listening to this, thinks they want to have a look or a little deeper look or unpack any more of the product, or I assume Michael, they can reach out to you if they just want to ask some questions on removing bias from their interview process, because that's going to fight for days for you guys as well, right? So where can they follow you?
LinkedIn is where I'm at. Don't have a Twitter, unfortunately, never got into it as well, but LinkedIn's the quickest way to get in touch with me.
Great.
Brilliant. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show, and yeah, we'll hope to see you in the future.
Thanks.
Chat to you soon. Cheers for having me.
Cheers.